I want to play my Gibson custom 1957 Les Paul Goldtop VOS. We're going to find out if this thing's any good. And this video isn't like other videos out there where, you know, they talk for like 7.5 minutes and only play the guitar for a minute, minute and a half. We're going to play this a whole heck of a lot. There's still going to be some talking though. I'm also partially colorblind, so good luck if this isn't green. It's supposed to be gold. But as always, the signal chain is listed in the description down below. There's also chapter markers, so if you want to jump around, you can do that. But enough talking, let's get after it. So you can't really do a review on YouTube without talking about the specs, right? I'm gonna try and do that rather quickly, and then we'll get on to 5 more sound samples. So starting off, we have a VOS finish, a vintage original sheen. So this is a lighter coating of nitro finish than the standard Gibson USA line. And that covers a single piece of lightweight mahogany, non-weight relieved, back with a 2-piece carved maple top. The color here should be gold, but again, partially colorblind. This thing might be green. We then have a mahogany chunky C-neck with a bound rosewood, dark rosewood board. The inlays here are aged cellulose nitrate. It's either cellulose or celluloid. We have the inlaid Gibson logo, and then we have the Les Paul model silk-screened logo, a little higher than where you would see it on the typical USA model. On the back of the headstock is where you should be able to see the Kluson Vintage Deluxe tuners. These are vintage sizing, so if you wanted to get a more modern locking tuner for a reissue, you would have to remount the holes to widen them so you'd actually fit the tuners through, because the holes here for vintage sizing are smaller. We also have a nylon nut. The bridge here is an ABR1 with a stop bar. The ABR1 is drilled directly into the body. We have 2 volume and 2 tone for a total of 4 CTS audio taper potentiometers, and the capacitors here are the paper and oil Bumblebee capacitors. Can't forget the 3-way toggle switch, and of course the pickups here are the Alnico 3 unpotted custom buckers. But that's enough about the specs. Here's 5 more sound samples. Now that we've heard those 5 sound samples, I say this in every single one of these videos, and that is, the next part here I am doing to appease the internet. It is beneficial, but if I don't do it, some people will turn their tears into the form of comments, and they'll say, why didn't you play it in clean? I need to hear it in clean. So here's that. But I personally always prefer to hear it with a little bit of light drive and stuff like that, so here's that. And that brings me down to the potentiometers. Let's go ahead and wiggle some volumes and some tones, and let's just hear how they sound. So you might be curious to hear the Gibson USA standard 50s up against the 57 here. So unfortunately, I don't own a standard 50s Goldtop, but this is a standard 50s with the AAA flame, so this was a limited edition. So let's go ahead and just do very quickly the bridge, middle, and neck comparison here. If you are looking for something a little more in-depth for a comparison between both of these, take a look in the description. I did do a comparison video. Now, most naturally, you'd probably want to hear a 1956 go up against the 1957. So, yeah, here's that. And then, of course, why don't we just do a 58 versus the 1957? So let's go ahead and hear that comparison. And then finally, to round out the 50s, let's go ahead and do a comparison between my 1959 VOS and my 1957 VOS. Alright, so there you go. There are all of the different sound samples and the sound sample comparisons for this video. So it's just going to be my goofy face talking to you now about my thoughts on this guitar. And currently, this is my second favorite guitar that I own, and it follows behind a little bit my 1958 VOS. Now, a lot of that has to do with the neck carve here. This and the 58 both have the same neck carve, the chunky C. There's just something about that thicker neck that really appeals to me. Now, there are more baseball battier examples, but they can vary as well. So my 1956 has like a thick baseball bat neck. It's a 2019. Since then, you can get varied neck carves for their chunky C for the 1956, so you can get basically the same neck as this, or you can get the chunky stuff. Just like back in the day, it varied. But the chunky C neck here, the baseball bat light, I guess you would call it, just fits my hand really well, and that coupled with the lightweight mahogany single piece body that is non-weight relieved, it just, I don't know, it strikes a really good balance. The 1958 I do find, because it doesn't have that like solid color, so it's just basically like a stain with you know, the nitro on top of it. So it just resonates a little more. I feel a lot more of the low end, whereas this, where it has a solid color to it, there's a lot more paint in the body, I guess, covering the wood, and it has a lot more presence than resonance, whereas the 1958 has like a really good balance of resonance along with the presence. So we as guitar players are crazy. Have you ever noticed that? But that's why I prefer my 1958 over my 1957. The unpotted Alnico 3 custom buckers here, they're just really good pickups. They're very well balanced, and they have just the sweetest top end to them. They're not, it's not like it's overbearing or anything like that. It just has the right amount of top end that shines and sparkles through on the top. Again, we as guitar players are crazy. But what I've always found, because a lot of people do like the 60s burst buckers, or the 61R and 61T. And what I find is you have to adjust your amp for that. So when you're playing, those pickups just seem to have a little more emphasis on the low end, and a lot more emphasis on the top end. So you actually have to go and correct your amp for that. Whereas you don't really have to do that for the custom buckers. And because of that sweet top end, things, if you're playing clean, they sort of chime a little better. And I find when you're playing with high gain, like that first sound sample that you heard, it's not overblown. So when you're really like digging into your strings, playing if you're playing like an open E, or at that point an open B, it's not really overbearing, and the low end isn't too much to where you have to go and, you know, bring it down a little bit on the amp, and it just shines through a little more. And that top end just accentuates when you're playing like fuller bar chords, I guess you would say, or power chords. It just kind of thickens things a little bit. It really helps to add a little bit of depth into things. And if you're not familiar with the VOS series, and you heard me go through the specs and I talked about the nylon nut, you probably thought I was absolutely insane, because nylons are what some people wear underneath their skirts and stuff like that, right? This is very different from that. They're not panty shields or whatever those things are. This is a solid nylon. I've always read mixed reviews on the nylon nuts. They're either like flawless, or it's something that, you know, you probably might want to replace the nut on it. Currently, I have 7 VOS custom shops, and none of them exhibit any of the negative issues with them. All 7 of them really perform really well. So it could be that some people are crazy, but it could also be that I won the lottery and I have 7 custom shops that don't have issues with the nuts. It's a toss-up on what that could be. And again, with all of the custom shops that I do own, they all exhibit a certain issue that makes it hard for me to, want to reach for something that is not any of those guitars. And that is the fact that they all ring out as one solid freaking piece of wood. I don't know exactly what it is, whether it is the ABR1 drilled directly into the body rather than in that weird metal doweling system on the USAs, the brass saddles that are covered in nickel, or nickel-covered brass saddles. The glue that's used in here, there's always been a big thing about hot hide glue. That's tinfoil hat, maybe. The single-piece mahogany body. There's just a whole bunch of different things that could be causing that with the VOS custom shops that I have, the reissues. But all of them just seem to ring out like one solid freaking piece of wood. That makes it a lot more enjoyable for me to play. Whether that translates into a recording or in a live setting, probably not. It may be, but probably not. But it just makes things a whole heck of a lot more enjoyable to me, so I'm constantly reaching for them, and it inspires me to play a whole heck of a lot more. It's just something that didn't really happen for me with the USAs. I thought they were the best guitars out there until I finally, worked up the nerve to try one of these out. I'm sorry, wallet. And when I say the USAs didn't do that, they inspired me to play a whole heck of a lot. But I literally can't wait to get home to play these if I'm at work. I'm thinking of these at all times. And even if it's just to sit here, listen to music, and play along with it, which I haven't done in a very long time, that's what's going on with these guitars. They're just phenomenal. Now, I feel like it seems like it would be a no-brainer for me to say that this thing plays like a dream. It's very comfortable to play rhythm, at least for me, and play leads on it. It's just very inspiring with the fact that it vibrates as one whole piece. So to my body, it's a lot more pleasing when I'm playing, and I feel it a lot more on my fingers as well. Could be psychosomatic, could be that we're all crazy on the inside, but that's just the way that I feel with these guitars, and worth sharing at least, right? So that's all I do have to say. Again, this is fantastic. I'm over the moon. And just in shock that I do own these guitars here. I'm very, very fortunate. Maybe I don't deserve them, what have you. I'm not a dentist either. But yeah, I'm very, very happy with making the switch from Gibson USA to Gibson Custom. It's not that the USAs are bad by any stretch of the imagination. It's just these inspire me a lot more than the USA line. That's it. Thanks for watching.